Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. Amma ba'du, my brothers and sisters, in our session on Akhlaaq of the Ummati of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we are looking at the qualities of people of Jannah, and in that context, the qualities of the first of them, which is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself, to see what were the things that distinguished him and set him apart as an example for all of humankind until the end of time. We are looking at this quality of complete certainty in his message. As I mentioned in the last class, what stands out, or the first thing that stands out about the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the total certainty that he had in the truth of his message and that he was the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, the first lesson that we would learn from this is the importance of having complete and total faith in yourself before we can, or the leader can have or claim to have faith in anyone or anything else. It goes without saying that if you do not even have faith in yourself, then how can you possibly have faith? How can anyone else have faith in you? It is the complete faith that a leader has in his own vision, his own strategy, his method, and in the belief that anyone following him would certainly benefit from doing so. This is what actually sells. Now, and it doesn't matter what that message is. Even leaders who were highly successful and then later on, history showed that they were wrong. They were actually, their faith was baseless. Their confidence was, and people who followed them did not benefit. I'm talking about even negative. But you might say that despite the fact that they were negative, how were they so successful? And that the so-called, the answer to that is that they were successful because of the confidence they had in their own belief that they were right. Now it so happened that they were not right. And this is true for all human beings, that they can make mistakes. Illa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, except the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because in his case, his decisions, his positions, his stances were guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not, he's not, he was not on his own that he was, that he said anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bore witness to this. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Allah said that He does not speak of His own volition. He does not say whatever He likes to say. He says what He has been ordained and He has been guided. So whatever He says is wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember in the late 90s, when I was living here in the United States, I remember meeting some VCs, some venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And I asked them, I said, what do you look for when you are assessing the pitch of a entrepreneur who comes to you to ask you to invest in his project? What do you look for? And to my surprise, without an exception, they said that we do not look at the financials of the project or the projected return on investment and all of that. They said we look at the individual, we look at the person. And if the person strikes us as somebody who is totally and completely committed to his or her project and completely confident of success, then we move from there and we look at what is the project, what is the strategy, and so on. But the first thing which has to impress us before we are even willing to turn the page to look at anything to do with the project is who is the person in charge of this project. And this is true of venture capitalists anywhere, people who are putting their money into projects. They said that we are the best guarantee for our investment is the individual to whom we are giving that money. It's not the project itself and so on and so forth. The best guarantee is the individual. If the individual is somebody who seems doubtful and who is wishy-washy and who's not confident about themselves and about their success, then he said it doesn't matter what the project looks like, because the reality is that a lot of the financial data, a big chunk of the project report is really prepared by some professional or the other who this person would have hired for, or they're doing it for the love of the guy or whatever. But the point is that it's not that individual who is reflected in that. But when he is presenting it, then they said we look at the individual. And this is true for anything, and it's even more true for da'wah, that when we speak about Islam, then we need to be able to speak about Islam with confidence, not with doubt, not being wishy-washy about it. We need to speak with confidence. We need to speak the speech of somebody who himself or herself believes in it and lives by it. And this is what sells. This is what is most impressive. If the leader demonstrates the slightest doubt in his or her message, the power of their leadership is lost, and it gets seriously compromised, and people don't believe them. Now, people follow leaders for many reasons. Some because they believe in the message, others because the leader is powerful, still others because of various affiliations with the leader. If the leader remains firm on his path, then gradually the followership increases and the trickle becomes a flood. Remaining firm and unwavering is the single most important condition for this to happen. The importance of certainty in your message is true for all leaders, big or small, no matter what their message. You can see this even in the lives of highly successful leaders whose messages were really very negative and even positively harmful, as I mentioned earlier, but because they were totally certain that they were on the right thing and the right path, and they communicated that with complete confidence, they carried the day, even if to the detriment of themselves and their followers, and in many cases to the detriment of innocent bystanders. Complete certainty is the only thing that can give you complete confidence. You can't obviously be confident about things that you are not certain about. Any internal doubt shakes and even destroys confidence. This is true even more about selling any product or service, and it is equally true about selling an idea, maybe even more true about selling an idea. Because the product or service can be seen and tasted and sampled, but the idea cannot be seen and tasted and sampled. It's the confidence of the seller which sells, not the product or service, which is for the most part untried. Even more so again about an idea which can't be sampled or tasted and has to be taken on faith. Imagine the confidence of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he could not only sell that idea of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but he did it so well that it stands to this day. And there are close to 1.6 billion people worldwide. Not one of them ever saw him or heard him because he died 1400 years ago. Yet these 1.6 billion follow him. It's very important, therefore, for the leader to ensure that he or she is sure of this message so that they can communicate it confidently. One of the things I teach is public speaking, and I say to people, never pitch somebody else's pitch. Even if you have to do it, if you have to make a presentation, a business presentation, which was prepared by somebody else, maybe a professional, your ad agency or whoever. Even if you need to do that, make sure that you sit with them and you become completely confident in what you're going to say before you go out there and you say it. Because if you are not confident about that, if you sound doubtful, if you seem to be on shaky ground, then believe me, that will completely undercut anything that you have to say and will discount all your words, and we will not be able to convince anybody because you yourself are not convinced. Today, more damage is done to the image of Islam by apologetic Muslims who are shaky internally about their faith than is done by open enemies of Islam. People see apologetic Muslims as one of them, but by their speech and actions, they apologize for Islamic values and indeed for even being Muslim. Naturally, the message that is received by others is, if this person who claims to be Muslim is himself or herself so shaky about their faith, then why should I even bother about it myself? Why should I try to learn? The cure for being apologetic is to seek knowledge, is to ask questions and clarify doubts, and once and for all decide who you are. In his entire life of prophethood of 23 years, there is not a single instance, even in the worst of hardship, that it could be said that the faith and certainty of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his message and his responsibility wavered in the slightest. This itself is a miracle and a proof of the divine mission that he had been entrusted with. This faith, combined with the fact that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a man with noble qualities, widely known to be completely truthful and trustworthy, having beautiful manners, a flawless character, great wisdom, excellent judgment, and great kindness, made him highly, highly credible. Many believed to begin with because they believed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and believed that if he had said it, then it must be the truth. He was known as As-Sadiqul Amin. The interesting thing about this is that even his worst enemies, people like Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, accused him of many things. They called him a magician, they called him a soothsayer, they said they called him Majnoon, they said he is mentally affected, he's gone mad and so on. But nobody said he's a liar. Nobody said he's lying, because the Arabs knew, the Quraysh knew him as well as they knew themselves. He was from them. He was born in their tribe. People like Abu Lahab, he was his own nephew. And Abu Lahab, when Rasulullah when Muhammad was born, Abu Lahab was so happy that his brother had a son that he manumitted and freed the slave who brought him that message. And he gave 2 gold bangles to this was a female slave girl who brought his message. He manipulated, freed her, and he gave her 2 gold bangles because he was so happy. Later on, when Rasulullah presented Islam, Abu Lahab became his worst enemy, and he would go around telling people not to listen to him, not to listen to Muhammad, and he plotted and planned to try to kill him and so on. But despite all of that, he never once said that Muhammad is a liar. Right? This shows the enormous credibility of the messenger. The importance of the personal character of the messenger is clear from this and cannot be overemphasized, and can seriously support or compromise the message of the messenger. There is no such thing as a credible message from a discredited messenger. If the messenger is discredited, the message automatically gets discredited. There is no such thing as a real leader who is not respected. They go hand in hand. It comes with the territory. If you are a leader, then you must be able to command respect. If you cannot command respect, you cannot be a leader, even if you are designated as such. In our corporate organizational world, we see this all the time. All the time. People are appointed as leaders, as managers, and they fail miserably. They are unable to inspire anybody. People will not obey them. People will not listen to them. They are not able to achieve the results because they are unable to reach the hearts of people, and people have no respect for them, and their credibility is shot through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself said about the character of Rasulullah وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, and verily you, O Muhammad are on an exalted standard of character. Personal credibility is the foundation of leadership. People don't care what you say until they see what you do. You are your message. You are what people see first. Then and only then do they even listen to what you have to say, or even listen to your message. We as Muslims therefore must put our own house in order. We must clean up our act. I can't possibly overemphasize this. A great nation is never defeated from the outside, as they say. It is defeated when it destroys itself internally. Like a huge wooden structure, a great fortress made of wood, for example, if it is infested with termites, it looks perfectly sound outwardly while it's being eaten up internally, until one day it collapses in a gust of wind because only the shell remained and the shell couldn't stand anymore. People look to see what they received from their leader prior to listening to his message, to judge whether the message should be believed or not. Leadership cannot be faked. Neither is it based on what you do in a particular situation or place. It is the effect of your whole life and all that you say and do and all that you stand for. Rasulullah, as I mentioned, had been given the title of As-Sadiqul Amin, the truthful and the trustworthy, by the people of Makkah long before he declared prophethood. That was based on his everyday behavior and dealings and didn't come from a theological base. Rasulullah said, can a believer, he was asked, can a believer be a coward? He said, yes, he can be a coward. Then it was asked if a believer can be a miser. And he said, yes, a believer can be a miser. And then it was asked whether a believer can be a liar. And he replied, no, a believer cannot be a liar. And this is in Musnad Imam Ahmad as well as in Mishkatul Masabih. Our brothers and sisters, when I first read this hadith, I wondered why Rasulullah gave so much importance to being truthful even over other more serious faults in character. Until I remembered two things. Number one, that lying is the root of all evil. Take any evil action and it is the result of lying to oneself and lying in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second was that when Rasulullah said a Muslim cannot lie, he was saying in effect that every Muslim is as-sadiqul amin. Every Muslim is or should be as-sadiqul amin, the most truthful and the most trustworthy. So Rasulullah was in effect giving his own blessed and honored title to those in his ummah who try to live by his standard. What can be a bigger honor than this, which comes with the honor of being called as-sadiqul amin by the malaika? The importance of character cannot be overemphasized, or neither can its impact. Listen to this story from the Seerah. Al-Hussein bin Salam, he was a Jewish rabbi in Yathrib, in Medina, and we know the story. He was given the name of Abdullah bin Salam, and he was one of the great scholars of the Jews, and he became Muslim, alhamdulillah. And they asked him, why? How did you know that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was truthful? And he said a wonderful thing. And he said that when I saw him I knew that this is not the face of a liar. This art or science, if you want to call it that, wallahu alam, of judging the character of a person by looking at his face seems to be lost to us. Um, but people like Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu and Imam Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi, they were trained in this and they knew this. And so was Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu anhu. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates a beautiful hadith from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said the signs of a hypocrite are three. Whenever he speaks, he tells a lie. Whenever he promises, he breaks his promise. If you have to trust him, he proves to be dishonest. So three things. He's not a sadiq, he's not a lamin, and he is a breaker of promises, which is a combination of both of these things. So who is a munafiq, who is a hypocrite? He is somebody who, when he speaks, he lies. When he promises, he breaks his promise. And if you trust in him, he proves to be dishonest. In another hadith that is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does not give up telling lies and evil deeds and cursing, Allah is not in need of his fasting. Now we are on the threshold of Ramadan, and it's a good thing to remind ourselves of the importance of good character. Ramadan and fasting is not just about remaining hungry and thirsty. So Abu Hurairah said that whoever does not give up telling lies, Abu Hurairah reported from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said that whoever does not give up telling lies and doesn't give up evil deeds and doesn't give up cursing, Allah is not in need. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of his fasting, of his leaving his food and drink. Today our biggest problem is our character. Generally speaking, it's not to say that there are no good Muslims. Of course there are plenty. But the decisions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come down on the basis of the behavior of the majority. The reputation that we seem to have acquired for ourselves in the world is that of being unreliable, of people who cannot be trusted. And that is a very, very bad rap to have, especially in our dealings. We've come to be associated with every kind of low quality work, be it coming late or short delivery or deception or shoddy work. You want to see something ruined, give it to a Muslim. This is the general principle that we seem to project for ourselves. Every Muslim function, for example, begins late. We laugh about this and we call it Arab time or Muslim time or whatever, but it stinks. That is not okay. Systems don't work even if there are any systems to begin with. And the only thing you get is excuses. Take masjid toilets, for example, the stinkiest in the world. Take our madaris. We say, oh, it's because of lack of money, but that's not true. That is not true. Go to other institutions of other religious institutions. Go to pathshalas, for example, and you will find the places very clean. It has been swept clean and so on and so forth. Cleanliness has nothing to do with money. It's a matter of I remember once I was invited to see the computer lab in a very big madrasa in India. I won't name the madrasa, but a very big one of the top madaris of India. Somebody had donated money to them, so there was this computer lab. So they took me to this room which was locked, and they opened the door, and there was this line of computers on tables. So the Maulana, the person who took me there, he said to me, इसमें किस चीज़ की ज़रूरत है आप बताइए कि इसमें किस चीज़ की ज़रूरत है, what is necessary, what more is needed here. तो मैंने कहा कि हज़रत इसमें झाड़ू की ज़रूरत है. So I said, this place needs a broom. All the computers and everything else was, they had an inch thick layer of dust. It was so dirty, the whole place was so filthy. So my point I'm saying is that that doesn't take money, that takes effort, that takes consciousness to keep it clean. But we don't seem to get the idea about that. All Muslim writing is characterized by bad grammar or spelling mistakes. Not because the authors don't know the language, but because they're just too lazy to check. Almost by definition, right? You read books, you see translations of books, especially into English, they're absolutely horrible. You see, including posters and so on and so forth. If it's for a Muslim program, if it's done by a Muslim, it will have mistakes. And completely unnecessary mistakes. All that is needed to run a spell check is to run a grammar check, read it a second time. You just don't do that. The word of a Muslim today is not worth the hot air it represents. Take any area of expertise, whether it is science or technology, literature, art, statesmanship, engineering, invention, law, architecture, trade, business, you will be hard put to find a Muslim name among those whose contribution stands out. Right? So how can you expect people to look up to such people or to follow them? Ask how many Muslim universities are publishing books and papers. Muslim universities from Muslim countries. Ask how many are doing that. I was reading some statistics. Spain alone, and Spain is not some great center of intellectual endeavor, but Spain alone translates more books in 1 year than the entire Arab world has done in the last 1 century. Right? In the last 100 years. Every year the Spain does that much of translation. Just question of translation. I'm not talking about any original contribution. I'm talking about translation. Even that is not happening. Rasulullah's life in Makkah was a series of increasing difficulties and escalating opposition. But resistance builds strength as long as you don't succumb to it. The greater the resistance, the more it will build your strength as long as you stand firm against it. As in bodybuilding, it's the lifting of weights that builds strengths in your muscles. So also in dawah, calling people to the truth and being firm and patient against opposition builds iman. This was the practice that the Muslims were getting in Makkah. There are many stories of all kinds of persecution that Muhammad ﷺ was a victim of. Those who dared to follow him were also subjected to cruel persecution, even torture, and some of them were murdered. All of this was done with complete impunity by the rich and powerful chiefs of Quraysh. However, all that this served to do was to make the survivors even more firm in their belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aqil bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu narrated that the Quraysh complained to Abu Talib that Rasulullah was disrupting their meetings. Abu Talib gently requested Rasulullah to stop making da'wah. Rasulullah said, "My uncle, do you see the sun? I am no more capable of stopping the sun, and you are no more capable of getting a flame from the sun than I am of stopping this message." Abu Talib said, "Go ahead, I believe you, and do what you must do." Now this level of certainty, he said, "You want me to stop preaching my message?" He said, I am not capable of that. I am not, it's not a matter of saying I will not do it. It's I will not do it, but it's something that I cannot do. It's something that's beyond my capacity. I'm not capable of stopping this message. And to give him an illustration, he said, I'm as capable of that as I am of stopping the sun, which means that I'm not capable of it. Now this is a seal that demonstrates best his complete certainty in his belief in the message that he had been charged with and his commitment to his responsibility. Nothing could deter him or slow him down or persuade him to dilute his message. Nothing could make him be politically correct or to frighten him or force him to give up preaching or compromise the message in any way to please anyone. He was only concerned with the pleasure of his Creator, Jalla Jalaluhu, and he worked only to achieve that, whatever be the cost that he had to pay. So the lesson now is for any leader to be successful, that complete certainty is the single and most critical requirement on which hinges his very credibility as a leader. One can only give what one has. So if the leader wishes to transfer his own passion into the hearts of his followers, his own belief cannot be shaky. You can only transfer what you have. If you have no passion, you cannot transfer it. The leader will be tested in his faith and must stand firm and demonstrate his total commitment until it becomes clear to all concerned. Then he will see the tide turn and people will be won over to his side, as it happened in the case of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. People listen with their eyes, they don't care what you say until they see what you do. When they see the leader walking his own talk, then they realize that he means business and will start to consider his message seriously. Then as they see the benefits that accrue, more and more start to follow him. My brothers and sisters, I remind myself and you that just to see this in the life of Rasulullah. Take for example, if you say, here was the Prophet he, for example, the first thing his message consists of, the first of those things is the importance of Tawheed, the importance of not joining partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu. So I'm saying here is the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam preaching Tawheed. Ask yourself, I know it's a oxymoron, it's a dumb question to ask, but ask yourself, did he ever bow to anyone other than Allah? Did he ever worship a grave or a mountain or a river, or did he ever worship an idol? Na'udhu billah. So the man who is preaching Tawheed is on Tawheed. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the next one is Salah. The manifestation of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah in action is Salah. 5 times Salah has been prescribed on the Muslims, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam preached this message. Now ask yourself, how many times a day did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam pray? Did he pray 5 times, 4 times, 3 times, 2, twice, once? Did he ever leave his Salah? What is the answer? We all know the answers. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prayed 5 times a day and he never left his Salah until his last moment, even where he was so weak and he could not get up in his last 2 or 3 days of his life. When he could not get up from bed, he would make wudu and then he would get 2 people to carry him into the masjid, and they said that his feet would be dragging on the ground while he was being taken to the masjid because he couldn't stand. That was his commitment to Salah. Whose commitment? Of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself. He had any number of excuses, including legitimate excuses, because illness is a legitimate excuse. You don't have to go to the masjid to pray if you are not ill. If you are ill. And if you cannot even stand, you are permitted to pray sitting or lying down. But he chose to be taken to the masjid, and in the masjid, of course, he had to sit and pray because he just couldn't stand. But I'm saying that was his choice, where he made this choice for himself. Fasting in Ramadan, did he ever leave that? I mean, not only did he never leave it, but of course he used to fast much more throughout the year. But in Ramadan, I'm talking about the pillars of Islam, I'm talking about what's fard. Right? What about zakat? Hajj is fard once, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did Hajj. Take anything, any aspect of Islam that he preached and look for it in his own life, and you will find that prominently displayed in his actions. He didn't just talk for the sake of talking. He believed in what he said, and he practiced that belief to the best of his ability. And that is the reason why he was so tremendously successful. People who believed him, they believed in him, and they followed him to the ends of the world. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Be kind and good to your wives. I am the best to my wives." And his wives and all those who knew them and knew him, they are witness for this. He was kind. He preached kindness to people who are less fortunate, kindness to the youth, to children, and he was the kindest of all of them to these people. He preached courage, and there's not a single battle which he fought where he was not right in the front. He led from the front. It's an interesting thing to remember that even though he led every single battle that he was participated in, he led it from the front. He never turned and ran from battle, but he also never killed anybody, even in battle. There's not a single person who died at the hands of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even in battle. Very interesting, on a side note that I am mentioning this to you. But think about that. And somebody asked him, they said, "Ya Rasulullah, why didn't you?" There was a particular incident in Uhud, and he still did not kill the person. So they asked him, "Ya Rasulullah, why didn't you not kill that enemy who was attacking you?" He said, "Because somebody who dies at the hand of a Nabi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them extremely severe punishment." And he said, "I did not even want my enemy to have that. I did not even want my enemy to be especially severely punished because he got killed by my hand." Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam preached generosity, and they used to say about him that he was generous like the rain-bearing wind. When rain falls, it falls on everything. When the wind comes, it affects everything. The cool breeze is pleasant for everyone. So his generosity, they said, he's like the breeze, he's like the wind, he's like the rain. He was generous to the point where he would borrow money in order to give it in charity. When he had none of his own, he would borrow money to give, to help somebody. This is where the credibility of the message comes from practicing it, not from talking about it. And that's the point I want to speak and make for you. Today, for example, we say Islam promotes scientific knowledge and education and so on and so forth. But we ourselves, we don't do that. We say Islam stands for justice. The fundamental message of Islam is the message of justice. But are we just in our own dealings? How many times have we heard this complaint that Muslims do not give inheritance to their own sisters? Muslims, again, there are exceptions. I'm saying by and large, Muslims' treatment of women is so poor, so bad, that Islam gets the rap for it, although it's nothing to do with Islam. My brothers and sisters, I don't want to make a long list of our problems, but I request you and I remind myself and you that let us look at our own lives and ask this question and say, what in my life needs to be changed? And then go and change it. Because we do not want to be in a position where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us this question. We want to be in a position where, alhamdulillah, what needs to be changed, I changed. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept that, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, to cover our faults, and to never be displeased with us. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.